My name is Ethan, and for most of my life, I felt like a visitor in a world that spoke a language I couldn't quite understand. It wasn't a language of words, it was a language of speed, of surfaces, of simple answers to questions I found endlessly complex. I listened more than I spoke. Not because I was shy, but because by the time I had weighed 10 different possibilities in my mind, the conversation had already sprinted ahead without me. I was a deep thinker, a label that sounds like a compliment, but often feels like an explanation for a quiet kind of loneliness. My mind was my home, a place of infinite corridors and echoing questions. I didn't just see a tree. I saw the silent war it fought for sunlight, the history written in its rings, a metaphor for my own life's unseen struggles. To me, a casual glance from a stranger could become an entire novel. A moment of silence was a question mark that hung in the air, begging to be understood. My brain, I later learned, was just wired differently. It was constantly scanning for meaning, asking why, not to be difficult, but because why felt like oxygen. But this inner world, so rich and vast, was also a cage. While others reacted to life, I observed it. I noticed the tiny flicker of pain in a friend's smile, the subtle hesitation in a confident voice, the way laughter sometimes sounded like a defense. And when I would try to speak of these things, people would look at me with confusion. They swam in the shallows of small talk, while I was diving for pearls on the ocean floor of thought. So I learned to stay silent, and they mistook my silence for disinterest. And really, it was just depth. This depth came with a price. My mind was a relentless loop of what-ifs. I would replay conversations, dissecting every word, searching for hidden meanings. I wasn't insecure, I just saw nuance everywhere. Every choice had a dozen consequences. Every emotion had roots that stretched back into the forgotten soil of my childhood. My mind wouldn't rest until it had mapped the entire territory. I was always thinking about my own thinking, watching my thoughts from a distance, trying to understand their patterns. This made me self-aware, but it also meant that I saw all of my own flaws in high definition. I couldn't just feel an emotion, I had to understand it. I would analyze love until it felt like a chemical equation. I would study fear until it became a predictable algorithm. I was so busy trying to hold these invisible things in my hands that I often forgot the simple joy of just letting them pass through me. Solitude became my native language. I would walk for hours, headphones in, not because I was lonely, but because I needed space to untangle the threads of thought that no one else seemed to see. I wasn't just overthinking my own life, I was thinking about life itself, about time and purpose and consciousness, questions that had no easy answers. It wasn't just anxiety about the future, it was a profound questioning of reality. But a mind that can connect anything to anything can also build a prison from its own connections. I would read too much into a silence, assume a hidden meaning in a simple text, turning my life into a philosophical puzzle I could never solve. It was like having a microscope that was too powerful. I started seeing things that weren't meant to be seen so closely. I knew the world wasn't built for minds like mine. It celebrated speed, certainty, and simple answers. My pause before speaking looked like hesitation. My silence looked like weakness. So I learned to hide. I learned to nod along in conversations, to smile politely while my thoughts were galaxies away. And the real dialogue, the honest one, would only begin later inside my own head. I craved connection, but only the kind that felt real. And to find it, I had to be vulnerable. But not everyone wants to dive that deep. So I became a quiet observer, a detective of emotion, waiting for a sign that someone else saw the world in shades of gray too. And when I found that person, I would open the door to my inner world all the way. But it often backfired. I invested so much meaning into everything that when reality didn't align with my deep expectations, the pain was immense. A small betrayal felt cosmic. A simple misunderstanding felt like a cataclysm. Everything mattered. And that was the double-edged sword of my existence. My memories were not just moments, they were entire ecosystems of feeling. A song could transport me back to a version of myself that no longer existed, and I would feel the echo of that past self as if you were standing in the room with me. My thoughts and my feelings were woven together. I couldn't just turn one off without unraveling the other. People called me too complicated, too serious, too distant. But what I really was aware. I saw the hidden structures behind everything, how fear disguised itself as anger, how love hid behind pride. And once you see the world that deeply, it is impossible to unsee it. I was always replaying the past, analyzing the present, and simulating 100 versions of the future all at once. It was exhausting, but I was about to learn the hardest lesson for a mind like mine, the lesson of letting go. It happened when I met an old clockmaker. My grandfather's watch, a beautiful, complex machine, had stopped working. I brought it to a small, dusty shop run by a man named Elias. He took the watch, opened it, and looked not at the gears, but at me. He said, "A beautiful machine. It thinks a lot, just like you." I visited him every day for a week. He would work, and I would watch. He never spoke much, but his silence was different. It wasn't empty, it was full. One day, I was agonizing over a decision, replaying every possible outcome in my head. Elias stopped his work. "You are trying to solve the ocean, my boy. You stand at the shore, trying to predict every wave, but you cannot. You are not the ocean, you are the ship. Your job is not to control the waves, it is to learn how to float." His words were simple, but they struck me with the force of a revelation. I had spent my entire life trying to control the ocean of life. I had become so good at analyzing the waves that I had forgotten how to feel the water. The final stage of deep thinking, I realized, was not in knowing more, it was in needing to know less. Peace wasn't in finding all the answers, it was in learning to live with the questions. The clockmaker fixed my watch. As he handed it back to me, its ticking now steady and calm, he said one last thing. "This machine tells the time. It does not control it. It simply witnesses it. Your mind, it is the same. Let it be a witness, not a warden." I walked out of his shop, and for the first time, I didn't analyze his words. I just let them be. I looked up at the sky. It didn't explain itself, but it still felt infinite. I finally understood. Depth wasn't about drowning in thought. It was about seeing clearly enough to float. I still notice the details. I still feel the weight of things unsaid. I still retreat into solitude to find my clarity. But something has changed. I am no longer at war with my own mind. I have learned to be the ship, not the storm. I have learned to listen to the 10 radio stations in my head, not as a deafening noise, but as a symphony. I stopped trying to dissect every moment and started to simply experience it. If you are a deep thinker, if you feel the world this way, do not apologize for your silence. Do not shrink your thoughts to fit smaller conversations. The world needs minds like yours. People who can see the invisible, question the obvious, and find meaning in the mundane. You were not meant to fit in. You were meant to see through, to turn chaos into clarity, noise into insight, and moments into meaning. Because deep thinking is not a curse. It is a way of honoring the profound, complex, and beautiful mystery of being alive. Thank you for your time.